Hello, Tim.
Hey, Joanna.
So we are here today to discuss the topic of motivation.
And the picture that you can see there is Herzberg's theory of motivation with his true motivators in the rocket ship and the launch pad at the bottom, what he would have called the hygienic factors.
Great. So let's start with the beginning. Yeah. When we say the bait has to fit the fish, not the fisherman, what we mean is that people sometimes try to motivate others by what they themselves are motivated by, and not by what others might be motivated by. And today we are going to look at motivation and demotivation. What are the sources of discontent? What are our own personal motivational factors? And what can we do to increase motivation in the organization? And we start by this very interesting concept by Herzberg, which goes into what motivation is, but most importantly, what demotivation is, and how can you deal with that?
And
Tim?
when you say most importantly, the reason for that is that from an organizational perspective, the demotivators are unfortunately more important because we can do something about them. So we imagine that all of the people watching this film are leaders in one way, shape, or form. So they have people reporting to them, or they are responsible for products or processes and are influential over large numbers of people. And so keeping your ear to the ground and finding out what is stopping people from working, stopping people from being productive, being useful in the organization is, of course, a really important thing. So you've got a number of different things there, like challenges, processes. Now, challenges, some people are motivated by challenges, but also people expect to be challenged at work. Yeah. Even if you go and work in a fast food chain, you still expect to be challenged at work. You expect, and I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because you expect people to think that you're good, that you're able to take on tasks and responsibility. So this element of challenges is something that falls into what Herzberg called the hygienic factors. And the hygienic factors, imagine you go to a hotel and you walk into your room and the bed hasn't been made. What do? You go back down to reception and you say, my room is not clean. It's not hygienic. Therefore, I can't stay there. Yeah. And when you go and work in a company, you expect certain things to be clean, to be hygienic. So you expect there to be challenges built into the nature of the job. What do you think? Would you expect to have a good relationship to the people around you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for me, motivation is a very interesting topic for me, but I will leave that for later. So if you look at this card, at the base of the rocket ship, there are these hygiene factors. Yeah. And these factors have to do a lot with the environment. It's a man's relationship with the environment. They consist of how you treat people or how you are being treated at work, your working conditions, your pay, your status. They prevent people from being dissatisfied and hurt, but they don't really motivate people, right?
It is arguable to say that some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by the quality of the coffee inside the organization. Yeah, very few. Maybe, 1 out of 1,000 people. But it would be fair to say that a lot of people are motivated by the relationships that they have at work. And I know any number of people who go to work because their friends are there and they have a great friendship and family environment at the workplace itself. But in the normal case, people are more demotivated by these things when they're not there, rather than actually being motivated by them. So, for example, take away the coffee and people will start complaining that they're not being looked after. Yeah. Take away people's desk, put them in a closed office after being in an open office for many years, and they'll complain about, the working conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, give them too much work, make them stay late for 2 hours every day, and they'll begin complaining about work-life balance, and that will eventually have an impact on the time during the normal time that they're meant to be there.
Yeah, I actually have an interesting example of demotivation. So, I applied for a job at a company a while back, and I went to the interviews, and everything went great. And we already have established everything. We were one step away from signing the contract. And before signing the contract, I asked, is there anything else that I should know? Any type of rules that you are enforcing here that I should be aware of? And they said, yeah, we have a dress code, actually. So you have to wear a shirt every day and, um, you know, pants. And I was like, really? Like, this is, no, it was 2013, anyway, it was, yeah, like 10 years back. And I was very surprised to hear that. And that was a deal breaker for me. Yeah. So for me, that is an important thing. For others, it doesn't matter, really.
I have an example of uh, uh, the owner of the company changed the carpet, or the company changed the carpet, 3,000 square meters of carpet. And when presented with the quote for the carpet, the owner said, there's no way we're paying that. That's way too expensive. So they chose a cheaper carpet, a polyester-based carpet. 2 weeks later, everybody starts complaining and about the carpet because they're receiving electric shocks every 10 seconds when they touch a piece of metal. And somebody went to him and said, I've received 20 electric shocks today. I'm leaving. Yeah. The boss thereupon said, well, that's because you've got cheap shoes on. Buy shoes with leather soles. So that was a great source of demotivation. But these are nice demotivators, right? The demotivators that we have to deal with every day is, the organization creates a different process. They create a different working pattern between 2, 4, 6 groups of people, and 2 years later, everybody is still complaining about it. They implement a new piece of software which costs hundreds of thousands and don't train people sufficiently behind it, and 5 years later everybody is still very demotivated when they even think about this. Or one group of people is getting paid in a different way to another group of people, and all of a sudden the unfairness or the inequality in salary systems becomes a massive demotivator for people. Or what are we speaking about? What date is it today? 2022. No, it's 2023. So the whole world is going back to the office, and so many organizations are suffering from big levels of demotivation, all built around the working from home or working back at the office and the rules and regulations behind that, which are now all of a sudden a big deal again. And so these demotivators, yeah, can and should be measured in the quantity of productivity that you lose out of these things. And this is the job of leadership, to keep their ear to the ground and work out which of these topics are becoming topics that they really have to step into and do something about.
Absolutely. So if we look at this image, Tim, we have a launching pad. And in order for the rocket ship to launch, we need that launch pad. Yeah, it needs to be there. So if we think about, let's draw a line between this and what was that? The hierarchy of needs from Maslow, right?
Yeah.
It's really similar in that way. If you don't have the basic needs met, you cannot think about personal achievement, personal growth.
And I would say that Maslow is even one depth below. I mean, he speaks about spiritual safety and security. He speaks about physical safety and security, food on the table. And for sure, we can assume that those have all been met before we even look at organizational motivation. And Herzberg's original research wasn't on a platform, a launch pad, and a rocket ship. It was a graph, and so processes were down at the left hand of the graph, which meant they're not very motivating for anybody, but for some people they are. money was a little bit further up, which means there are definitely people who are motivated by money, by salary, by an increase of salary, but not for very long. And the ability of this to demotivate is much greater. As you go further up the scale into the real motivators, then what you find is that these things, the real motivators, are now they don't have much of a capacity to demotivate if they're not there, because they're intrinsic, because you have to bring them to the table yourself. But just before we move on to those things, there's a couple of things that need to be underlined about that launch pad. Number one, the fly always sits on the wound. So the focus of an organization's attention will always go to bad news before good news. Number two, most big organizations have got a method of collecting information from the organization. So a questionnaire, a regular questionnaire, and they say, what do you like? What do you not like about the organization? And they're looking for sources of demotivation. And so these questionnaires are very useful because they give people the opportunity to give anonymous feedback on things that are concerning them. And it should always be recommended that leaders never focus on this line by line, but they do focus on it trend by trend. And if a trend gets important enough, then for sure it needs something saying about it and doing something with it. And when we meet face to face with our participants, the exercise that we do is related to that launchpad. We ask our participants to take a bad message and deliver it to a group of people in a way that doesn't completely demotivate them. Yeah, in a way that shows your people, we're taking this seriously. We're going to do something about it. We're going to think about it. This is not going to be lost. I have heard. And that is exactly what most leaders don't do. So what we try and show is that leaders have a great capacity for preventing demotivation, and that a capacity is very often not realized to the extent that it can be.
Yeah. And that's based on their own capacity to listen and spend time immersing into the problems of their teams.
Exactly, without being pushed and manipulated and forced into the picture that their organization wants them to have, and retain their sense of trueness and authenticity, and their own firm standing position when it comes to this is who I am as a leader, and this is the message that I have to share with my organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.